Looks like you have a mug of tea there.
Yes,
What kind
good stuff.
what
It's
kind of tea? Yeah.
blueberry orange with ginger. It's so good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's like
I
a
was a little
great.
under the weather, so I was trying to pep up a teeny bit.
Yeah, yeah. The ginger stuff is great for that, and it's good for like after dinner. And I could do a whole podcast about tea. I think.
Yes.
Like,
Oh my
just
gosh, you
way too
should. I
much of it.
love tea. I
All
love
right, that's
tea.
what this is about now. This is the
Yes.
it's the tea podcast.
I know.
So
Hopefully. Sorry,
yeah,
I was gonna say,
yeah. So
hopefully you don't mind if I drink a little tea and drink water. I'm sorry.
you're all set. I have like my actually my wife's Nalgene bottle because mine I don't know where I put it. But no, you're good. Um, you were in a death match, sort of. Like it didn't get real over the top death match, but like I saw the No Peace Underground show, Fear the Gay Agenda.
Yes.
Saw that it was announced you and Dark Sheik. I figured, okay, these are two technical wrestlers who do some other stuff. You know, you have some power moves, you have some, plenty of strikes, and she does maybe a little bit of high flying. So like but I figured this was going to be a technical match when I saw it was announced, despite No Peace Underground. It was not a technical match. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there. Maybe the only time I've seen a lockup at the beginning of a No Peace Underground match. But I gotta say, and I mean, I know this is all, played out in the match, and it was spoiler alert, sort of an undoing for you. But it was you weren't super comfortable in that environment. Like you weren't really willing to just like go to town with these weapons and smash glass and all that. So like, I don't know how legit it's like. Could you go back in there and think and like actually smash glass and mix it up, or do you think like, oh, this isn't for me now that you've tried to do it?
You know what's interesting? It's so funny. The entire show at No Peace was so interesting because like I had never really like watched much death match wrestling. Maybe you'd see a gif of something crazy that happens at a show. But as
Yeah.
far as like really sitting down and like just kind of processing the entire show and just trying to understand what that is, I hadn't done that before. And just being right there and seeing all this happen, I was like, oh my God. I was like, yo, y'all are bugging. What are y'all doing? This is crazy. And then I got super nervous. I'm like, well, look, I don't know. I like Sheik a lot. I don't want to hurt Sheik, So
Yeah.
I was very nervous and I didn't want to get hurt. So I was just very, and once that first glass breaks, there's just glass everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Even after they switch, that you just, I thought maybe I still had some glass in my hair. And I'm like, wait a minute, hang on, what's going on here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
You could see that you were like getting stuck with it because you would like grab at your hand or your arm or something. Like you were.
yeah, it's just little nicks everywhere. I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I mean, you understand what you're seeing, but when it's your turn to do it, it's kind of like, oh my gosh.
Right. And maybe
you know?
maybe Sheik's a little more comfortable with it just because like the Hood Slam shows could get kind of wild,
Yes.
but I don't think she's ever done it to that level. And again, could be wrong. But or a lot of the people on the show. I mean, like the opener, Ashton Starr and Billy Dixon. And I've certainly seen Billy in some like hard hitting no DQ matches, but I've never seen Billy take like 10 light tubes to the head. Like, what is that? And I mean, this is somebody and have, worked alongside for a while now. I mean, that's got to be a little jarring because presumably maybe you're watching it on a monitor, but I think you're probably like in eyesight and seeing this happen. So
I was maybe about 20 feet away and I was just like, what?
yeah.
I literally, my throat just like starts closing up. I'm like, well, I'm not picking up any light tubes. I got super nervous. But I was like, you know what? I'll have some fun. I'll buy in,
Yeah.
I'll have fun with it my way, to a way that makes me more comfortable. And then, I wouldn't mind, going back to No Peace. I think I could break a glass this time, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
That's, yeah, I mean, and I mean, honestly, like for anyone who hasn't seen it, I mean, there was a story told in that match. It wasn't, and one criticism a lot of times of deathmatch wrestling is it's not like huge on stories, and that's not always true.
Right.
And at PWI, we have varied opinions on deathmatch stuff. There's a couple of people who just like, no, that's not wrestling. I don't like it. I think it's just another style of wrestling. It might not be my go-to that I want to watch every single day, but like there's an art to it. And the
Yeah,
story that you and
absolutely
she,
is.
yeah, and the story that you and Sheik told was a really different one and very different than anything I've seen on there. That whole thing's on IWTV, so people can go check that out. Really good show. So I mean, speaking of IWTV, by the time this comes out, this isn't new news, but pretty recent news. Big match announced for the IWTV 100 show. So you're going to be teaming with Lee Moriarty, and the two of you are facing Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander. So it's kind of like this indie versus AEW dream match, sort of. I mean, Orange and Chris still occasionally work in the indies, but they're on cable TV every week, you know. And then you have you and Lee, who are these two. I don't even want to say up and comers because anyone who's listening to this podcast already knows the two of you and the work you're doing, but trying to make a name for yourself on that national stage and raise it up a notch. But you're also in the ring with two wrestlers who are, I don't know. I mean, two wrestlers who can definitely go, but,
Yes.
you know, kind of silly at times. I mean, this is not necessarily the type of match that you and Lee are known for. So, like, what are you thinking going into something like this? How do you prepare?
I mean, I'm still just kind of picking my jaw up a little bit
Yeah.
At the announcement in general. I'm really just trying to have me and Lee be a cohesive unit.
Right.
And I think that that's gonna lend well, you know, as our styles are both technical in nature. So I think we'll be able to be cohesive. And I think that's what's gonna give us the edge, hopefully.
And it's also kind of exciting because now obviously Lee has now had the IWTV championship.
Yes.
Not an official championship of IWTV, but of course you have the Pan-African World Diaspora title, which has appeared all over IWTV on different shows. So the two of you are going up against these two former IWTV champions too. So this to me is like oddly kind of not intergenerational, but it's like these people who are already up and doing it on cable TV every week. And I mean, do you see it that way? Am I looking too much into it?
No, I'm thinking you mean somewhat of a passing of the torch as far as the independents go. Is that what you would? Is
well, I mean,
maybe I'm reaching.
It's going to depend if you and Lee win the match, it's a passing of the torch. If not, well, I mean that's up to the two of you, I guess. Yeah. So, I mean that's a big match. That's exciting. You have a lot of other stuff coming up. I mean, we have the Ring of Honor, the Women's Championship tournament. So titles vacant. There's a lot of big names in that tournament. You know, you've already appeared on the Ring of Honor Women's Wednesdays that go up on YouTube every week a couple of times. So this tournament, I mean, obviously the goal is to win it, but what are you looking to do along the way? Like, who do you want to cross paths with in that tournament?
Allison Kay for sure. Absolutely. That would be quite a dream match of mine, actually. I'd be very excited to do that. And I would also love to face Willow Nightingale. I think that would also be very, very cool.
Yeah, and those are
two names that stick out to me for sure.
And you did have a match with Willow pretty recently on Beyond Wrestling, I think, right?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So the two of you are a little bit, familiar with each other. Have you faced Allison before?
I had not. No.
Oh, that's exciting. That's an interesting matchup. I mean, just in general, I mean, and I think a lot of people on social media, as soon as that tournament was announced, like, who do you want to see in a relaunched women's division? Maybe even before there was a tournament, like, who should be part of this? And like, your name came up immediately. I mean, you feel like such a fit for Ring of Honor in so many ways because you're kind of this throwback technical wrestler in a lot of ways. Kind of reminds me of what we see in the pure division and a lot of other, I mean, honestly, it's just Ring of Honor's bringing bread and butter is the sports, like, classic wrestling presentation. If you were in there now, obviously, the women's championship, goal number one, What if Ring of Honor opened it up a little bit and you could wrestle? Because you're no stranger to intergender matches. If you were able to wrestle anybody in Ring of Honor, who would it be?
Now there's the list. Okay. So, I mean, look, to open it up just means more people I can work with. And I think that's always a blessing wherever I can go.
Yeah.
So I would love, of course, to wrestle a mentor of mine, Jonathan Gresham. That was to happen last year under the Black Label Pro banner, but the show hadn't gotten around because of COVID. So I think just to have it under the Ring of Honor banner would be so dope. I think it would be like somewhat of a full circle moment.
Yeah, and I mean,
the entire Pure division is amazing. All the dojo guys are absolutely amazing. Brian Johnson, top notch. Joe Keys, really, really good guys. World famous CB. Look, I'll mix it up with Shane Taylor. Look, I'll duck some punches for sure.
You have to with him. Sure. I mean, yeah, that's quite a list of opponents there. And I mean, Gresham specifically, I mean, the guy in Ring of Honor, I mean, he's, he had 2 championships at once. He's in there mixing up, Rush, of course, is the Ring of Honor world champion, but he's not necessarily on every single show. He's not there as often. He's there for the big matches where Gresham's, this workhorse. And I mean, I see a lot of similarities between the two of you. Now, you've actually trained alongside him a little bit. I know he's not your trainer originally, but you have done some work in the ring with him,
yes, not initially. I trained at the Ring of Honor dojo for about 2 years. So, yes, he was in charge of some of the training. So I got to train under him and world famous CB most recently as well.
Right, and I've noticed a lot on social media because he'll have these CB will have these world famous CB will have these clinics and training sessions, like all day marathon things. It kind of seems like, and people will travel from all different parts of the country for that, and you're a regular attendee of those, I guess I should say. Is that something that you think is more, maybe even more important as you get further into your career, to not rest on your laurels, to go and learn from other people who have been doing it longer or have been doing it differently?
That's so funny you say that. There's actually, I was talking to CB earlier today, and there's a seminar next week up at the school that I'm going to be going to. I'm going to double up and go to both classes because they're up near Philly. So it's about a 3.5 hour trip. So I try to make it worth it and just stay the whole day and really sink in. I mean, it would be worth it regardless, but you know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, makes sense.
I definitely, I enjoy training. I love having relationships with different schools along the coast. I always feel like during my travels, I always want to kind of have a place where I can go to train for a little bit if I needed to, or just, I honestly, it's become a sole way for me to network, honestly, because when you're not at the shows, how else are you going to get in front of certain people? So sometimes once you show face at a seminar, that's kind of your introduction. And now other things can parlay and happen. I mean, it's how I got to Japan, honestly. So pretty cool.
So I don't think I even knew that you competed in Japan. So what did you do? What did you do over in Japan?
Yeah, for the Wrestle One dojo. So Hood Slam. Yeah, Hood Slam. They had a seminar one day with Kaz Hayashi and Sonny Ono, and they were going to be traveling with a group to Wrestle One in Japan and stay at the dojo for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, sure. But I didn't have enough money, so one of the students ended up paying the rate for the seminar for me. And I went through and they picked me and I was like, oh, shoot. I got to go to Japan a couple months later. It was pretty awesome.
That's amazing. I don't know how I didn't, I feel like I try to research these things and knew about your career, but no, that's awesome. Is that something, would you be looking to, at some point after things open back up, to go back over there and...
Absolutely.
Nobody says no to that. Nobody's wrestling in Japan is okay.
Yeah, right. Are you kidding? What? It was amazing. It was such a beautiful experience, and everybody was very kind too at the dojo. I was the only female, only woman there, so it was just I was, not that I had my reservation, not that I had any reason to have reservations, but I was just
Yeah.
kind of like, whenever I'm walking into those situations and I'm going to be like the only, female or the only Black woman there, it's kind of like, oh, but it was not like that. They accepted me as their own, and everything went pretty chill and went with a pretty good group of people as well. So
That's awesome. I mean, so like if you were to go back now, well, not right now, things are still kind of closed up. Maybe by the time this is released, there's something different, but probably not. Um, I mean, my first thought is if you go back over there, I mean, there's promotions like Stardom, Tokyo Joshi Pro, where you could get in the mix. And I mean, certainly like everybody wants to do that. So it's going to be like, well, okay, get in line. And like everybody wants
right.
to, you know, um, I mean, is that on your list as well? I mean, like any of these specific promotions, people to work with, or is it just, I'm going to get back over there and see what happens?
Well, so I was lucky enough because I had traveled to the UK as well. And the difference between those two trips is that there was an element of not structure, right? Because I was going with a group and there were things to do. So I'm like, I like that. So if there was another way, and I think that's kind of a part of the Japan wrestling experience, that there's like this dojo mentality and we'll go here and we'll pick you up to go here. It's very like, it felt like such a group. And I'm like, I really like how that felt. So I think I would definitely be looking forward to that part of it. And it makes it easier to like plan too. Like if I had to go on my own, like, and just leave it up to my own devices, I'd be stuck. I tell you what, I was almost stuck. As much structure as we had, I still almost got stuck. And I'm like, oh man. So
Yeah,
I would definitely need a plan if I was going to Japan.
it's a big thing. I mean, you're
For
going
sure.
somewhere. I mean, I don't know. Most people, I could probably assume that you're not fluent in Japanese. I know maybe two words. Um, and I'm probably not pronouncing them right, but it's there's just so many things you can do over there. And I mean, there have been like Masha Slamovich and Del Miecto were over at the Marvelous Dojo. Obviously, a lot of people have worked with Stardom over the years. So I mean, there's tons of opportunity. That could definitely be. I think you'd fit in really well. I mean, you have that work ethic, that just desire to learn, which is I think like where a lot of wrestlers get stuck. And I would never name names, but like there's this temptation to think like when you're doing pretty well, like okay, I know what I'm doing. I don't need anybody else to tell me anything. Foolish. I mean,
Right.
it's not just wrestlers, for anything. Like it's like even just my role with PWI, the editorial role, like constantly second guessing myself, and it's not like not having confidence. It's
Right.
more just okay, like you don't know everything. Why don't you go like you've talked to literally nobody about this? Go see what they think. Like this whole idea of feedback and stuff. Um,
Yes.
Now, when you were in the UK, was that with Eve? Did you do like a match or two? Am I remember that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I worked 3 of the Eve shows, and I worked for Title Wrestling as well.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know, and I mean they've brought in talent from Japan and from the US, from all over. So I mean, it kind of makes sense like that structure and like learning mentality would be there. Um, we're going pretty far off the next question I wanted to ask, so I'm going to abruptly change topics here.
No, it's
Um,
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't know.
no, this is not your. I had a follow up and then a follow up and a follow up and a follow up. I'm like, oh, that was a good point. Let me ask her about that.
Yeah.
So right there, I don't think we've acknowledged it since we started recording. We have the Pan African World Diaspora Championship belt, which is sitting next to you.
Yes.
Which is it's just beautiful. And if someone's this far into the interview, they probably already know about the belt, but maybe they don't. So could you just talk a little bit about what that championship is and, more importantly, what it represents? And you've been I'll just front load by saying that you won this championship. You're the only title holder to date. So you don't have to say that for yourself, but you are. And that's a big thing to hold a championship exclusively. But could you talk a little bit about the title and what it represents?
Yes. So this title, the Pan African World Diaspora Championship, it represents diversity. It represents a sort of integrity as well.
Mhm.
Johnny Cross, who is the founder of Fight Club, where this finds its home,
Right.
we met about 12 years ago. We were in the Army together and we deployed together. And at that point, I was kind of just trying to figure out what the next step was. I was kind of like, I said like, oh, well, maybe I should just try to train and start wrestling. And his whole idea was, and we didn't have much scope of what we were even talking about. It was just the whole, oh, well, where are you going to wrestle? And I was like, I don't know. I'll just wrestle wherever. And he's just like, well, you're going to need a place to go and you're going to need this. And why don't we do this? And because his gripe was always, how is the Black talent being treated? And if there was a place for us, then maybe that mistreatment wouldn't happen because there'll probably be, people in charge of our storylines ourselves,
Right.
that'll be able to act our art out in a way that makes us happy. So we'll probably be a lot happier at work. The, morale will be higher and things like that. So that was kind of his angle. And I was just kind of like, all right, I just want to be able to wrestle men and women. That was kind of, I want to wrestle everybody, non-binary, everybody gets, a shot. So that was, so between those two ideas, this was kind of born. He showed me a design one day and I was like, wait, we're actually doing it. At this point, I'd already trained at Team 3D and I was moving back up to DC in like early 2018. And I was like, oh, so we're doing it. All right, I'll be right there. And so came back home, just kind of uprooted and just reset. And it was just like one big new beginning for me and for him. And it's starting to look that way for a lot of other people. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. It's just supposed to represent diversity. So as far as challenges go, underrepresented is kind of the key word here. Talent of color, LGBTQ talent, things like that. All over the world, and that's not exclusive to the US. At this point, I'm fully vaccinated and I have my passport. So I'm just waiting on, somebody to cut the ribbon so I can run through. But
well, that's the thing, like a classic world title is, and this is the old school PWI thing, but like it's worldwide, meaning like, even if it's not right now being defended all over the world, that you'll go anywhere and take it with you and fight all comers. And especially with this being like not segregated by gender in any way. And you've already been in the United States doing this. You've been going from promotion to promotion. Like you said, Fight Club Pro is the home for this, but most of the defenses haven't been there. They've been other places. They've been all over the country.
yes.
So, where would you like now? You hinted you could go all over the world with it. If you had to have a short list of places you would go and defend this, and you don't have to be as specific as promotions or, like just even countries, like where would you like to take this and defend it someday?
Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Africa, for sure. Let's see. I want to go to the UK. I want to defend this in Japan. That'd be super lit. And honestly, I want to defend this on TV. I think there's always been this huge separation between the independents and what we see on TV, right? And I think that there's some companies that are slowly starting to like inch towards that. They're either using a lot of independent talent or they're allowing talent to still remain independent while contracted, which is huge. For me personally, I dig my freedom and I enjoy being able to, do both. So, that right there is an amazing selling point. So being able to do that would only lend to me being able to travel more and things like that. So I would love to just go to TV with this too. I know that feels lofty to say. I get a little nervous saying it, but that just means you say it again. So I would love to just defend this on TV, like maybe under the Ring of Honor banner. That would be very lovely. The commentary team during my match, they were very kind and they spoke very highly of this title. And I'm so appreciative of that. And I'm hoping to live up to that under their banner, hopefully, of course.
That's a pretty great specific. And I mean, it sounds pretty achievable as a goal. So, I mean, we'll have to stay tuned and see.
I know, right?
Right. So we spoke about the possibility of these intergender matches in Ring of Honor. There was a big, I mean, you've had many intergender matches defending the Pan-African World Diaspora Championship. You've had them just in other settings. Big one you had, which I think we've got to mention, is the PWI sponsored Iron Match for Beyond, which was the first Beyond match in, I don't know, like 6 months or something like that at that point. Yeah. It was live on Valentine's Day on YouTube, and it was a 60-minute Iron match with you and Tony Deppen, who you'd never faced before. One of the biggest names on the independents, current, as we're recording this, Ring of Honor TV champ. We talked a little bit about this for a story in the magazine, but for anyone who hasn't read it, I mean, like, when you get in there, and I mean, I think this was almost 3 times as long as any individual match you'd wrestled before. I mean, you'd wrestled a couple matches in the 20-minute range before, which is still it's a pretty long match. I mean, like, when you see those on TV, a lot of times it's like, on WWE, it'll be a match where there's some shenanigans going on the outside, or there's, things because it's hard to keep going at a good clip for that long. So 60 minutes, how do you pull that off after never doing it before?
That's a great question. I
was gonna say it's like putting you on the spot a little bit, but not as much as it was for you to put yourself actually in that match. Yeah,
it happened so quick. Honestly, it was maybe like I saw his tweet, I answered his tweet, and honestly, like a week and a half later, we were wrestling. I was like, oh shoot, it's kind of like, oh, this is very, very quick. So I had very little time to prepare. So I had to find some allies like mid-match, and one of the first allies was how frustrated I noticed that Tony would get sometimes. So I'm like, okay, I think I can. I was nervous. So I'm like, well, can't outlast this guy. He's out here wrestling like 2 hours. He's just, knocking him out. He's got the wind on him. He's got, lungs on his side. And I was just kind of like, oh, shoot. So I kind of was able to use his arrogance somewhat to kind of trip him up a couple of times and kind of get in his head a little bit, which was really interesting. I felt quite the hurdle, walking into that match, and another ally was those time cues. Oh man. I remember, hearing that we had 5 minutes had elapsed, and I was like, what? I feel like I've been here for like an hour already, just because, how long you have to be in there. So now you're just kind of like, all right, let's count it down. And the first time I heard like 5 minutes have elapsed, I'm just like, okay. So basically I'm just operating until the next time cue. I'm like, I don't know when he's going to say 10, but when he says it, I'm going to be ready.
Right.
I'm going to breathe for the next few minutes, so you just use those time cues as like an ally somewhat.
And I mean, both of you, one thing maybe works in both of your favorites there is like, I would call you going into the match. I mean, he does certain things that maybe you don't do as much. Like he's a little more aerial than you are, that sort of thing. But he is not maybe the mat wrestler and submission wrestler that you are. So I was inclined to think that's an advantage where you can sort of slow it down and keep the pace your own. But I mean, at the same time, it's giving him a chance to rest. So I got to imagine it's just and I know you've done promos with a chessboard and things before. I mean, you have to be thinking ahead in a match like this, although not too far ahead because it's 60 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I know that I've watched some of his matches and I noticed that he'll speed things up and he'll maybe run for a little bit and things like that. Not me. I would prefer to keep things nice and slow. I'd like to
Mhm.
stay in control. So trying to work my strengths against that, I was like, okay, we're not. The minute I saw him like go to try to run or jump, and I grab him immediately. Like,
Oh, no,
no,
you
we're not
don't.
doing that. You're not going to be running around for 60 minutes, buddy. No way.
Yeah, that's
No, I
smart. I
know
mean,
he could, so I had to stop him.
right. And it was pretty far into the match before the first fall happened, if I remember right. It was almost like 50 minutes. So, I mean, the two of you had each other scouted. And I mean, speaking of scouting, so I don't remember where you said this, but it was something about having like hours and hours and hours of wrestling playlists that you just like you can reference or you go to, or maybe they're just playing at home all the time. So I mean, real student of the game stuff, and it makes sense for everything we see from you in the ring. Um, what have you been watching lately? Like, is there anything new or old for that matter that you've come across that's been helpful or interesting to you?
Yeah. So, how I study wrestling, I just kind of pick some things that I like or some things that jump
Yeah.
out to me. Um, I know that if I'm just picking like from my own brain and from my own knowledge, I always go, okay. So Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe, they they move how I want to move. They act how I want to act.
Mm-hmm.
Their mannerisms, there's this unteachable swagger that they have. So
Right.
let's find a playlist and just watch like some of their entrances even.
Mm-hmm.
I'll listen to how commentary speaks about them. I watch when they take their time. I watch when they speed up. So I watch like that. So I'll go maybe to like YouTube or something like that, and I'll type in, Daniel Bryan. Maybe I'll pick a promotion like Ring of Honor, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll just flood the play. Oh my gosh, there's so many matches. It's great. And so I would sit and just watch like that. And the same for Samoa Joe. For him, I use, TNA and also Ring of Honor too. So I watch those and I kind of just pull from his catalog as a whole from a certain company. And then I watch World of Sport. So
So
that's kind of how I'm receiving my wrestling information right now.
got it. So I mean, Daniel Bryan's appropriate because you've started using one of his signature holds lately, the cattle mutilation. Which are you calling it anything else, or is it just still cattle mutilation? Do you have a name
It's
for it?
called cattle mutilation for now. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I'll keep that as is for now. You know.
as a nod to the creator of the move. I mean,
Yes.
it's interesting because like not even specific moves, but there's like deliberateness that he had that I can definitely, now that you mention him as an influence, I see it in your matches, and it's not, again, you're not throwing all the same strikes or doing all the same holds, but there's just it's cerebral. Like you're in the match, and sometimes people are out there and it looks like they're, you know, it's hard. Wrestling's hard. You have to you have
Right.
to tell a story. You're doing this physically, and you can occasionally see people pop out of it a little bit. But you're very into it. And I don't see that too often. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just the discipline coming into play. I've got to think too. I mean, you had long stay in the military, so I mean that's discipline right there. That's humility, willingness to learn. Um, I mean, it almost feels like cliche to say that would have to inform the way you go about wrestling, right? Like, I mean, that affects your life long after you're not serving anymore. So, um, do you think that's an asset over some of the people you're facing?
Oh yes, for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure. Um, I feel like there's, I feel like maybe before I joined the military that I just kind of had this curve, right? And
mm,
I think for some, like joining the military sort of put a rod in my back. I've somewhat like my shoulders are back, my chin's up. I'm
right.
making eye contact. It's just those little confidence things that I'm very happy to have had, because wrestling will test that confidence all the time in just so many different ways you don't even know. But it's testing your confidence. So to just have that already,
Mhm.
it makes navigating this business a little bit easier. So I'm happy to have it.
Cool. This is kind of off topic, but I found myself talking music a lot on this show, and I mean,
Oh
some of
yeah.
it's uh, kind of the connection between independent indie music, punk music, whatever, and the independent wrestling. I mean, there's a similar spirit. What have you been listening to lately, whether it's music or podcast or audiobooks or like what, if you're working out or whatever, what are you listening to?
Ooh, my workout playlist is it's actually very varied. You know,
Is it?
it just kind of depends. There's a lot of vibey jams on there. I love like
Mhm.
maybe like an 8 minute like orchestra type of, you know, and then other times it's like a lot of Tupac, a lot of Biggie. I so many Jay-Z playlists. It's been crazy. I've been listening to J. Cole's new album. I've been
Mhm.
jumping into a little bit of, you know, Spotify has been really cool for that too. I've been trying to
Oh
like
yeah.
listen to a little more punk music and stuff like that. So now that I can like search by category and get super specific, and oh, it's been getting crazy. I've been having a good time. It's like I start at Bad Brains and then then I'm
Yeah.
everywhere. I'm everywhere like in a few hours actually. At the end of the playlist, so much has happened. I'm like, all right, let me stop headbanging and just sit down for a minute. But for real. Like,
It's cool because if you're listening to like orchestral stuff or hip hop or punk, I mean, it'll make these separate playlists like, okay, here's your punk playlist, here's your hip hop playlist, here's your orchestral playlist, and you can bounce back and forth, and then it'll have another playlist that's all of it mixed and like, whoa, this is really all over the place. I mean, I do you so when you are working out, I mean, do you ever just let it go like that, or are you like very specifically building these things like, okay, I need to come up here and go back down here?
I build them. I got a heavy lifting playlist. I got a stretch playlist.
Okay.
I have a take a walk playlist. I'm very like particular about like if I'm gonna be getting on the treadmill, if I hadn't worked out in a little bit and I kind of need like a little extra whatever, there's certain music. It's so funny. It's really funny actually now that I think about it.
And it's this recurring theme here with you too. It's like hyper. I don't want to say organized because there's like a negative, like, oh, you're like too in like particular about it, but it's not that. It's like this
Mhm.
intensity kind of thing. It's like it's a chill intensity. It's like you're sitting here and you're a very chill person, but it's like there's a lot going on up here, and I'm like I'm 10 steps ahead of everybody else,
No.
and that's why I'm doing well. Like it's this quiet determination of, and that's impressive. I think that's, you know, a few years hence when you're too big to be on the indie show, we'll know that that's what did it. The quiet determination, the work ethic.
Aw.
I know you're busy, Trish, so I want to thank you for coming on and not take up too much more of your time, but is there anything you want to plug?
Um, Shoot, let's see. I'm at Trish Adora 202 on Twitter and Instagram. I do have a What a Maneuver shop, and I've got
Hmm,
some new merch dropping soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe in
awesome.
the next like week or so, probably by the time this drops, I'll have like new merch out in my store. So that should be pretty fun.
All right, yeah, so everybody make sure to go follow Trish. Trish, thanks for hanging out today.
Yes. Thank you for having me.